Go live.
Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me
There it
what
is, right there. The little ditty.
to make all my
There it is, the little ditty.
dreams
Let's
come
go live.
true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live from my home office right here in Granbury, Texas. The Brazos River is right over there with very little water in it. Hey, you guys know the drill. We have one viewer already. Woo! All right. Let me know who's looking, who's checking in. Bring your questions to me. I kind of thrive on that. That's part of the reason I do this is so you guys will ask stuff. You guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Hello, Scott Thrash. You and I have been talking. Got your pond cooking out there in southwest Texas near Del Rio. Can't wait to hang out with you a little bit and talk about that. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this video to your website or to your thread or to your timeline or whatever the hell you call it on the social media stuff. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Here in a couple of weeks we'll have that drawing. So, hey, I thought I'd start talking about water today. And Scott, this is something you really need to hear. Scott just ordered 2 years worth of subscriptions to Pond Boss. Hello, Jay Spires. Good to see you, buddy. He's a regular. Jay is. So I thought I'd start off talking about water today. I'm just fascinated with water. You know, water is the vehicle. Every pond is only a pond if it has water. There's your revelation for the day. If you don't have water, you don't have a pond. A pond is a vehicle. It's kind of like what gets you down the road. It's kind of like what takes you from point A to point B. It's the medium in which fish live. So what I want to talk about to start off until you guys start pitching a few questions at me is I want you to understand water. And you know, I've got to tell you, I've been spending a fair amount of time in the Bible. And, you know, at age 69, I probably ought to be spending more time in the Bible. But just trying to understand the principles of nature. I've studied nature. I've studied ponds. I've studied forests. I've studied trees and grass and ecosystems. Now, as a career for 45 years. That's a long time. And I studied it way even before that. Hello, Michael Eric. Good to see you, John Henry. Danny Mack. Yeah, it's pretty humid in San Antonio. It's pretty humid here. I've decided to be inside much of the day. Not this morning, but some of the day. So there's some things about water that just fascinate me. And Danny Mack is a scientist. He's an engineer. He is a knower of large things. Danny Mack is a nuclear physicist. He understands stuff that very few of us do. Hello, Jim Allen. Good to see you. Steve Scharf. Good to see you, buddy. So we got Iowa, we got San Antonio, we got Kentucky. Steve, I forget where you hang out. John, same with you. I know that Scott spends a lot of time between Waco and Midlothian and Del Rio, where his ranch is down there in southwest Texas. Kansas, yeah, thanks. Hey, I love Kansas. Kansas, man, I've learned a lot about fish from people in Kansas. Hartley Fish Farms, Kingman, Kansas. Remind me to tell you a tale about that later on. Probably not tonight, but later on. Around a campfire. That's a good campfire story, Steve. So Debbie and I came through Kansas the other day. We drove from Colorado, from Breckenridge. We stayed in Hayes. Actually, we spent overnight in Hayes on our way to Eureka Springs, Arkansas for the second half of a vacation with our adult kids and our grandkids. And I just love Kansas. I mean, I love the Flint Hills. I love the cornfields. I love the sunflowers. I love the plains. America is a pretty cool country. Back to water. So water is the vehicle. It's the medium. It's the medium in which your fish live. Oh, okay. So yeah. Well, actually, I don't really want to tell Kenny, but I drove right through Goodland. So I wanted to give him a call, but we were a little bit pressed for time, so I didn't. Bill Hartley stalked Doug Cusick's. Bill Hartley, you know what, dude? I got to tell you, I knew Bill Hartley's daddy. I knew Bill Hartley's daddy. Look at there, Chris and Carrie Lusk. We've got to be kidding somewhere down the road there, you guys. So anyway, I want to talk about water. So the thing about water that's fascinating, that there's physical properties about water, there's chemical properties about water, and there's biological properties about water. And water was probably the thing that took me the longest to really begin to understand. Hello, Joel. Good to see you from Clinton, Louisiana. So we got people from all over the nation. This is so cool. I love that. I love having friends from all over the nation. It's just so much fun to be able to talk to you guys and be able to share your questions and share your stories. Oh, water. Here we go. Water. Tim Johnson from Oklahoma. Hello, Tim. I don't remember you. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Welcome to the happy hour. We've got water over there. Speaking of water, I want to tell you a few things about water. There's some physical things about water that are amazing. At 39 degrees, water's hello, Wayne. Good to see you, buddy. Yeah, we had a cool vacation. Hope Josie's doing good. Hope you guys are about to get that house done, dude. You guys need to be living in it instead of working on it. I know you're nodding your head. Yep, you're ready for a cocktail. Let's meet in Hyco and we'll have a little fun. We got a little free time coming up in the next few days. Doug lives in Wichita. Farmers, okay, south of Cunningham. Yeah, okay, I know that country. Yeah, I do. I got it. You have this thing called winter. We have this thing here called summer, which you're getting a dose of. I'm talking about water. Okay, Lusk, focus in. Come on. So water being the vehicle, water at 39 degrees is the heaviest it can possibly be. As it warms from that temperature and cools from that temperature, it expands. It weighs less. That's why ice floats. And when I was younger, I always wondered, how in the world do ponds not freeze solid in Minnesota and Michigan and North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, the curd country. So why do ponds not freeze solid? It's because when the water freezes, it expands. It's lighter, it floats. So ice floats, and it insulates that frigid temperatures in the wintertime to keep from freezing the rest of the pond solid. So it gives fish a refuge, a warm water refuge under the ice. And I tell you what, here in Texas where I live, I will contend to this. Our water gets colder in the wintertime than water does under the ice in Idaho or Montana, where they've got 10, 15 inches of ice. The water below the ice is 40 degrees, 39 or 40 degrees. Our water here can get to be 33 degrees from top to bottom. So the other properties of water that just fascinate me is water's ability to dissolve things. It can dissolve nutrients, metals, minerals, lime, magnesium, salt, iron. It can dissolve stuff. And the things that dissolve into the water being the vehicle. Hello, Amber Young. Golly, hadn't seen you in forever, girl. Holy cow. There's Kenny Sanders. Hey, Kenny, don't be mad at me, dude. We drove right through Goodland last week, and I didn't call you. I should have, but I didn't. Debbie said, you know what? If you call him, you're going to feel bad because you need to stop, but we don't have time. We got to go. So we were clicking along Interstate 70 from Denver. We're headed to Eureka Springs, Arkansas. We spent the night in Hayes. So I'll make a trip up there one of these days to make it up. I promise. Before I die, which I don't know when that's going to be. Amber Young, good gosh. Amber Meek. I tell you what, Amber is such a sweetheart. She is one of those ladies, woman. She's a woman. She grew up with several of my kids. Amber is one of those people that you just want your daughter to be like. So Amber, I'm so glad you're checking in. So anyway, where was I? We're talking about water. Trevor Fry's got something. Trevor's growing some big bluegills, and he's got a story in Pond Boss. I'm starting to lose my place already. So I'm going to go back to water. Oh, water chemistry. So the chemistry of water affects the biology of water. So things that dissolve into water give the water permission with the right temperature to grow stuff. Phytoplankton, which grows feeds zooplankton, which provides a food chain, which allows fish to thrive. And you know what? If your water quality goes south, gets bad for 15 minutes, fish die. So water is the number one most important thing that you guys need to be thinking about when you're trying to manage a pond or lake. If you don't have, I call it happy water. If you don't have happy water, nothing else matters. Water is the number one most important aspect of a pond. So, my fascination with water is going to transpire to the ideas that I want to convey to you to aerate it. If you've got an oxygen meter and you're checking the oxygen and it's too low, it's too late. You need to do something before that happens. So water is going to give you clues as to what it's going to do if you'll be checking the parameters. Water chemistry is a big deal. Oxygen is a big deal, although oxygen is not as big a deal as people think, because if you're checking it, you got to see the trends. There's trends with water. The pH can rise and fall. Photosynthesis, respiration, that all affects what's going on with the water chemistry. So the biology affects the chemistry, and the chemistry affects the biology. And so as I'm making my way through the Bible, and I'm studying all these different ecosystems, all this stuff is starting to make more sense, kind of like this wisdom thing. And it's important to try to convey that to you guys. So the wisdom I want to convey today, to start off with, when I start hitting the questions that you guys are pitching to me, is that if you will pay attention to your water quality and try to keep it consistent through aeration, or managing the algae blooms, or managing the plankton, then the water will reward you by growing much better fish, much happier plants. And since it's the vehicle, it's the thing that's going to get you down the road on the journey to get to the destination that you want with your pond. So there we go. That took 12 minutes. Trevor Fry, my water turned brown during the winter, and it remained this color for a few months. It was unfertilized. It then turned its typical green color again in the spring. It had never been brown before. There was no construction or other source of sediment. I don't know enough about zooplankton, but I guess that might be the culprit. Can you educate me, please, on what? Okay, so, yeah, you bet. All right, so it's not the zooplankton. So look at it like this. So in Louisiana, Trevor, I'm going to give you a Kansas analogy. You grow wheat. And if you're a cattle rancher, you're going to turn the cows onto the wheat. Let them graze it down to a certain point, then you're going to pull them off. But if you don't have the wheat, the cows aren't going to be able to thrive. So if you've got zooplankton to color the water brown, if they don't have enough wheat to eat, if they don't have enough phytoplankton to eat, they're going to die, which is going to shift the water color even a little bit more, probably to a clearer color. So when the water is brown, that is due likely to the presence of tannic acids. And in Louisiana, that makes pretty good sense because you're forested. So in the wintertime, when the trees lose their leaves and the leaves begin to steep in the water like tea leaves do, it turns the water brown, which also absorbs quite a bit of the alkalinity of the water, and it can make the water a little bit more acidic. So brown water typically is slightly acidic, and it can be as acid as 5.0 pH. So, but in the springtime, as the alkalinity begins to rise through absorption of clay through absorption of lime through your soils, then that can give the nutrients the mineral boost it needs to start a plankton bloom. So the plankton blooms are triggered by temperature. You're not going to get a zooplankton bloom if you don't have a phytoplankton bloom first, because the phytoplankton bloom supports the zooplankton bloom. So what would cause the water to turn brown? Tea leaves, or oak leaves, or pine needles, or anything like that. So I'm going to tell you, that's my story. That's my answer, and I'm sticking to it for now, unless you make me change my mind. Steve Sharp, have an aeration system. When sizing the aeration system, how many turnovers should we plan for if we want to run half days in the summer? Does that impact the system size? That does not impact the system size. Kenny, are you mad at me? We tried to find a Kentucky Fried Chicken right there in your little town. There is not one. So we kept going. We stayed in Hayes. Pecan flavored bourbon. So Steve, going back to your question. If you're running your aeration system for a half day, and you know what? The engineers that sell these aeration systems, they really want you to turn your water over 2.5 times a day. I don't think you need that. You know, if half to 2/3 of your water can contact the atmosphere during the course of a day, especially at night when it's hot like it is now, that's enough. Because basically what's going on is you want the water to be able to move vertically through the column, contact the atmosphere, expel its gases that have developed as there's been aerobic composting, that's a good word for it, and allow it to expel its gases and absorb gases. Absorbing gases from the air, it's going to absorb oxygen, nitrogen, and a little bit of nitrogen, and hydrogen, which is going to help create or fuel the energy, or be the energy that fuels the processes of that decomposition of organic matter. So, so how many times should it turn over? I think if it turns over half a time a day to 3/4 of a time a day, that's enough. And if you're running half a day, that's enough. So, that's my answer to that. So, Jim Allen. So, here's the water question. pH 8.2, that's a little high. Temperature is 28 degrees C, which is close to 80. Oxygen is 8 to 9. Okay, and it all looks typical, except conductivity went from 370 to 260. Any top of the head thoughts? Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are top of the head thoughts. First of all, if your pH is 8.2, that's high. That means you checked it in the afternoon when photosynthesis is at its highest. Temperature is close to 80, somewhere around 80 degrees. Oxygen is 8 to 9, which is almost 100% saturation. What that tells me, Jim Allen, is that you were checking your water at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when photosynthesis is at its highest, which means the oxygen is going to be at its highest. So when the water temperature is 28 degrees C in the 80s, then your saturation of oxygen should only be 85% under ideal conditions. Your saturation of oxygen is at 100. So what that tells me is you got a pretty good phytoplankton bloom. The reason the conductivity went from 370 to 260 is because some of those minerals are now bound in that phytoplankton. So when the phytoplankton are consuming minerals, consuming nutrients, consuming nitrogen, consuming phosphorus, and photosynthesizing, y'all are going to be so freaking impressed with this answer I'm going to give you after 45 years of studying this shit. Here it is. You are checking your water, and please don't tell me I'm wrong. You will deflate me. No, not really. So what I'm seeing here is that you're checking these parameters in the afternoon when photosynthesis is at its highest, which means the pH is going to be at its highest, oxygen is going to be at its highest, conductivity is going to be at its lowest. So check it at daylight and see if it's different. Because if you check it at daylight, your pH is going to be 7.5. The temperature is going to be 2 to 4 degrees Celsius cooler. Oxygen is going to be more like 6 to 7 parts per million. Your conductivity is going to be 320 to 350. And there's Amber. I love Amber. I miss Amber. I have fond memories growing up around your house along with your boys. Good to see you. Yeah, great to see you. Hey, Ian, why don't I get more of an algae bloom after rainstorms when the pond looks great till it rains? Thanks as always. Ian, how do you get more algae blooms after? Well, I tell you what happens after a rainstorm. After you get a rain, the bloom starts over. So what a bloom likes the best is stable water, where the water is autonomous, top to bottom mostly, where the temperature is the same, where the chemistry is the same. So every time it rains, it changes the pH, it dilutes your nutrient load, it takes out the existing stable plankton bloom, and it wants to start over. So when that happens, you'll get, when you say more of an algae bloom, what that really means to me is the water is going to have a more green tint than that olive green tint or an olive brown tint. So when the rain comes, the solution to pollution is dilution. How many times have you heard that? So what happens after a rain, it triggers a brand new, I tell you what it does, it gives a restart to your plankton bloom. Help me out here, Danny Mac. You need to be chiming in, dude. You might have a little glass of something, but you ought to be able to have enough of your fingers to type. Come on. Mike Cottrell, good to see you, buddy. Doug Cusick, my water's not happy right now. Yeah, you know what? Down 36.5 inches. If your water's down 36.5 inches, that's probably a little more than evaporation. Hello, Todd Austin. Kenny Sanders, and I would have killed and fixed you a chicken. I'll have to. Hey, Deb. She's ignoring me. I'll tell her in a minute because I don't want to throw her under the bus. Hey, David Standerman, good to see you. Oh, Jim Allen, you shot me down. I'm still going to stick with my answer because it's pretty good. If you've got a bloom and you're getting those numbers at 9 in the morning, check it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Jim Allen, our spreadsheet guru, dude. Jim Allen is a stud. I'm telling you. Ron Ardouin. Dude, hey, you know what? I know you called me the other day. I owe you a phone call. I will do that. I promise. Just, I've had a whole lot of stuff going on this vacation thing. Justin Ludwig, good to see you, buddy. Mark Hicks. I've noticed that many fish feeds contain copper sulfate as an ingredient. Why is that? Is trace amounts of copper needed for healthy fish growth? I don't get stumped very often. And when I do, I don't like to admit it. So I want to think a minute, see if I can bullshit my way through this one, which I don't think I can. I have no idea why many fish foods have copper sulfate. Copper is a trace metal. Dude, Mark, I don't have a good answer. Congratulations, you're the first one to beat me today. I didn't talk to anybody. Can you do Fahrenheit instead of Celsius so I don't have to convert? Hard doing that, drinking wine and eating boudin. What kind of boudin you got? Roadkill? So, 73 degrees Fahrenheit is, I think, 23 degrees Celsius. So that's kind of my go-to. Okay, Doug. Okay, Larry Hardesty, been seeing some posts on people starting aeration in the heat. Oh, bad decision. That's a really, really, really bad decision. Really bad decision. Yeah, having a fish. Yep. Well, I don't know where those posts are, but they're not on the Pond Boss website. If they are, I've ignored it or not seen it. Danny Mac, here he comes. I knew he'd chime in. Rain also implies cloudiness, bad for plankton, but I also think there's stuff in the rain, algae. The thing about rain, people don't really comprehend this. But as the drops of water fall through the atmosphere, they're absorbing gases as they fall. One of the gases they absorb is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide drives the pH down. So, I was kind of under the misconception that a lot of times when we get acid rain, it's because there's acid being spewed into the atmosphere and the water absorbs it on the way down. That's not quite true. That probably happens maybe way back in the day for the steel belt states. But the reality is as it absorbs carbon dioxide, when rain comes out of the cloud, all it is water. There's no minerals, no metals, no way to buffer anything. So it's going to absorb what it can as it falls. And one of the things that it absorbs is carbon dioxide, which means the pH is going to go up. Larry Hardesty, I get it. Having a fish kill, that makes sense. I don't know why in the world anybody would start an aeration system in July without using a startup protocol. Robbie Pommier. Okay, I hope I pronounced that right. Robbie, no aeration. Okay, so in the colder the rain, the higher the nitrogen. And that's true because water's its absorption rate is higher when the water's colder. It can absorb more stuff. Okay, so Robbie, no aeration in this heat. No, that's not what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying is in the summertime when you have this heat, you've got a layer cake effect in your pond. You've got a warm layer of water sitting on top of a cold layer of water. And that's by design. The design is heat and water wants to rise because as the water absorbs the heat, it expands. So the heat wants to go up. I'm looking at Ron's answer. You need to drink a little more wine, Cajun. Eat more boudin. We'll get to that copper sulfate thing in a minute. I thought about what you're saying, but I wasn't going to say it because I don't believe it. I'll get to that in a minute. So, hey, Robbie, so here we are, dude, is what happens this time of year when you got that warm layer of water, that's where all the productivity is going on, right? And below the thermocline, which is the dividing line between that warm layer and that cold layer, that water beneath the thermocline is toxic. It's anoxic. So that water cannot communicate with the atmosphere, nor does it have aquatic plants growing in it to where it can produce oxygen through photosynthesis. So with all the microbial activity going on at the interface between the water and the pond bottom and the organic junk that wants to compost, that whole layer of water runs out of oxygen really, really fast. Just within 2 or 3 weeks. That typically happens in May or June. So, I'll lubricate my throat. Whew. That tastes like water. Who poured that? Bird Dog. Y'all check out birddogit.com. I'll get into the commercials in a minute. So, when you kick on a bottom diffused aeration system this time of year, it pushes, so it creates bubble plumes that are vertically moving up in the water column. So it takes that lower layer of water and mixes it with the upper layer. So when that happens, that lower layer gets into the upper layer and it's sucking all the oxygen out of that water. So you're sending basically anoxic / toxic water from the bottom to the top. And when you do that, then all that water that's starving for oxygen wants to release its gases, absorb oxygen, and when it does that, it can cause, you can call it a turnover, but it's basically taking that toxic water, mixing it with the upper layer of water, which consumes a huge amount of oxygen, and you can kill your fish. And I've gotten a couple of phone calls so far this summer where that's exactly what happened. Where that pond owner kicked on an aeration system, regurgitated that toxic water to the top, and caused the fish to die. So the way you do it is check with your manufacturer, follow their startup rules, and so what typically you do Robbie, is you'll kick that aeration system on for 15 minutes the first day, and you can smell it. I mean, when you kick it on and you got toxic water below, and it mixes with that water above, and you get a little bit downwind, you can smell a musty smell or a rotten egg smell. So you turn the system on for 15 minutes, turn it off. The next day you kick it on for 30 minutes, turn it off. The next day you double it. 2 hours, turn it off. And after about 10 days or 2 weeks, you've been able to take that bottom layer of water, allow itself to get rid of and vomit up all that toxic stuff that's in it, let it go into the atmosphere, send it on to Canada or Mexico or your neighbor, let it diffuse into the air, and then you can run that system a little bit more. So that's the explanation about that. So let me tackle what Ron's got here. Fish food was the only reason I can think of. The only reason I can think of that there's copper sulfate in the fish food is that it's just one of those micronutrients that fish might need, just minute amount of copper. So there's absolutely no fish food manufacturer on the planet that's going to try to put an algicide in feed to control algae. It's going to be something that bolsters the nutrients for those fish that they're trying to feed. And I don't know what it is. Hey, Pond Boss Magazine, you guys know what I'm going to say. $35 a year. Say it with me, Ron. Danny Mac, Kenny. I'm listening. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. $35 a year. You know what? Seriously, all seriousness aside, I'm still kidding. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a call or an email or something from a Pond Boss subscriber who says, every issue I get a nugget. And I don't know how many nuggets you need to make a necklace and then wrap it around the neck of your wife for you to have enough stuff to make it worth it. So $35 a year, Pond Boss is worth it. We try to put this thing together where you have enough good meat each issue that you can take something out of it and use it. I got a call from a guy last week, and he's been a Pond Boss subscriber for 25 years. He's in his late 70s. He's getting ready to kind of wind down. He says, you know what? I've kept every one of these magazines because I've referred to them for years and years and years. Is there anything you can do with them? Can you donate them to like a university or something? So he is going to send, actually he already has, I don't know, I haven't talked to Leanne in a couple of days, but he's going to send a big box. I told him we'd pay freight, $150, to send our magazines back to us. What am I thinking? But some university somewhere is going to get a great big backlog of these magazines. And the point I'm making is there is so much stuff in there that you guys can use. So, Texas Hunter Feeders. I was talking to a guy yesterday on the phone, and he was trying to decide whether to buy a Texas Hunter Feeder or spend $250 less for one that's kind of new on the market that he doesn't know much about. He's in Missouri. Oh, I thought my wife was talking to me, but she's on the phone. So anyway, there's a new feeder on the market, which I don't know anything about, and he wanted to save a couple $100. So I told him about Wayne. I told him about you. I said, hey man, Texas Hunter Feeders, not only do they have great products, they've got great customer service. Because Wayne Lancaster, who's watching this show right now, Wayne has had the horrible misfortune to have 2 500-year floods within the last year. Who does that happen to? It happened to Houston. Well, they've kind of earned it, but not over there near Iredell, Texas, where Wayne is. And Wayne's feeder was submerged under several feet of water until his pond went down. And I knew Texas Hunter would take care of him. I knew it. I knew all we had to do was send him an email, one of us, either Wayne or me, and sent him an email and say, hey, listen, Wayne's had a little misfortune here. His feeder was inundated, flooded with water. So Wayne went down there, dug out $60 worth of frickin' fish food, fed it to the raccoons or whoever wanted it at that moment, cleaned the feeder out with a water hose, and not only did the motors work, the frickin' timer worked. And I'd already let Cody down at Texas Hunter in San Antonio know what was going on. He said, just let us know. So I love Texas Hunter. They're great feeders on the market. Texas Hunter is my favorite, not only because their products are good, but their customer service is astonishing. I got a call from Cody down at Texas Hunter a few days ago. He says, hey, I got a letter from one of the guys that you recommended buy the feeders, and he's a little upset because here's the reality. This guy who's a good customer, a good friend, long time, known him 30-something years, he bought 12 Texas Hunter feeders for his 5,000-acre ranch in northeast Texas. Well, he lets his buddies go to the ranch. Well, those dadgum guys will open the feeders, pick some feed up, throw it out by hand, watch the fish eat, giggle, and then put the lid back on and not latch it. You know? And so he's had to pay his ranch hands to go out there and clean wet feed out because the lid blew off. So he sent a letter, says, hey, I don't like these feeders anymore. Help me sell my 12 feeders. So Cody calls me. Cody's willing to get in his truck, drive up to northeast Texas, go through every one of these feeders, fix any issues there are that's wrong with them, you know, and make sure that customer's happy. That's what Texas Hunter does. That's why they're my number one go-to. Purina Mills, I love their feeds. Their distribution system sometimes is not the best. You know, sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, but I'm going to tell you, I've been working with Purina Mills since 1995. Y'all do the math on that. Next year it'll be 30 years. They have great recipes. If they can ever get the left hand to what the right hand is doing on their distribution, they won't be defeated. But they've got outstanding feeders. David Schneiderman, Easy Docks, longtime supporter of Pond Boss. Check him out. He's watching this show right now unless he bailed out so he could go ride horses with his granddaughter, which he does that. Speaking of Texas Hunter feeders, how do their fish feeders differ from my deer feeders besides being more directional? That's the difference. Directional feeders for feeding fish is way more important than scatter feeders. But it makes them cost a little bit more because there's a little bit more to feeding fish than there is to feeding deer. You know, $60 for a bag of fish food is a little bit different than $18 for deer corn, which should cost $6. Hello, Brent Rutan. Good to see you, buddy. So, hey, you guys pitched me a few questions. I've kind of shot my load here, so to speak, on this. Let me scroll back through and make sure. Robbie, I got your aeration question. Danny Mac, I love you, buddy. Ron, I love you too, buddy. Let's see. Copper sulfate. We talked about that. So, Jim Allen, I want to go back to that a minute. You do have a bloom. So, if you're checking that at 9 o'clock and getting those results, check it in the afternoon. Your jaw will drop. Plug that into a spreadsheet. So, hey, guys, you throw me a few questions, or we're going to wrap up. Let me see if I can think of something else to talk about with you guys. We've talked about water a little bit. I've beaten habitat to death. You know, really, for you to be the very, very best pond managers, can a severe drought cause the water to... Yes, a severe drought can cause the water. Okay, let's talk about that. So, that's good. Holy cow. You guys are pitching them nice. Robbie, are you in Florida? Apple snails. Every apple snail starts off small before they get to be as big as your frickin' fist. So, apple snail control, red ear sunfish are really your best option because they can eat them when they're little. The problem with apple snails is they start off on the ground. So you must be in Florida or somewhere where it's semi-tropical. I don't know. I don't know a really good answer for apple snail control other than raider sunfish will eat the little ones. Okay, so let's see here. So the guy in North Texas still, yeah, he does, but I'm going to talk him out of it. Oh, so you're in Louisiana. Okay, you're in South Louisiana. Hey, look at you guys. I tell you to ask some questions, and here they come. All right, so let me kind of get my mind in order here. All right. Let's see. I've covered the apple snail control. You know, you must be in way south Louisiana because apple snails ought to die off in the winter because they're tropical. The only place I've ever heard of them really where they're a problem is in South Florida. Okay, so I'm going to tackle Steve Sharp here. What area of a largemouth bass would you fin clip without hurting the fish? Do their pelvic fins, so the fins underneath. Just clip off half the fin. And the reason is you'd want to fin clip a fish is so you can identify it later, knowing. So what you'll do there is you'll clip off half of the pelvic fin. It will grow back, but there'll be a line in it, kind of like a scar. So part of the reason people fin clip a bass would be so they can go back 4 or 5 years down the road. It's kind of like tagging, except it's not. So you can fin clip 50 fish, and you can use that like in a mark recapture study. You can't study those individual fish because you don't have a tag with a number and links and weights and all that. But fin clip, here's the answer to your question. Fin clip a pelvic fin, pick either the left one or the right one based on the year that you do it. And if you'll clip off about half of it, it will grow back, but when you finally catch that fish and look at it, you'll see like if this is the shape of the fin and you've clipped it, there'll be a line right there. You'll see it just like this. There's a line right there, then the fin has grown back. Trevor, so can a severe drought cause the water to become brown? Yes, it can. And the reason it can is, here's what happens when you have a severe drought, is the water evaporates. And the only thing that evaporates is the water. Everything dissolved in the water stays behind. So if you've got a lot of pine needles, you've got a lot of tree leaves, if you've got a lot of lime, whatever, that stays behind, it gets more concentrated. So if the water has got a lot of organic matter in it and the water dissolves, it's going to magnify or increase the levels of whatever is dissolved into the water. That can be tannic acid. So that absolutely can cause the water to become more brown. So, Steve, dorsal with a V. No, I would not do that. I would do the pelvic fins. That's the best ones. Jim Allen's going to test after. Yeah, you know what? Test in the afternoon. I'd really be interested in seeing what you find. Why are pumpkin seeds so damn hard to find? You misspelled damn, dog. There's an N at the end of that. The dam you spelled is about damming the water. Which, hey, we're talking about ponds. Michael Eric, he's a buddy of mine, even though we've never met. You guys go to birddogit.com. Transparency, my son owns that company. It's a hunting company. He's a pretty sharp kid. I'd say he got it from his mother, but he didn't. So why are pumpkin seeds so hard to find available? They're not easy to raise. You know, you got to get up into, actually, Michael, you've got to look around in, I'll tell you what, check in with Nate Herman up in Peoria, Illinois, Herman Brothers. He's got his finger on the pulse of every fish hatchery in that part of the planet. The only place I've ever really been able to find pumpkin seeds that I could buy are in upstate New York, Michigan, and even part of Minnesota, because they're not easy to raise. So these fish farmers would rather raise fish where they can have a better crop with more volume at a reasonable price. So I think there's even a hatchery, there's one in northern Nebraska or southern South Dakota. I don't remember. But they're hard to find because they're hard to raise. Justin Ludwig, what is the number one thing to do for ponds in the heat of the summer for everyone in the South? Pay attention to their water quality. Pay attention to your water temperature. Temperature affects what happens with a pond. You know, aeration is a big deal. That doesn't mean everybody needs to aerate, but paying attention to your ponds, to your water temperature is a big deal. Paying attention to the volume of aquatic plants you've got is a big deal. If you've got more than 20-25% coverage of rooted aquatic plants in your pond at this time of year, that's knocking on the door to have an issue. So pay attention to that. David Schneiderman, this here, I love this. Listen to this. We seem to have had the perfect storm for growing blue-green algae. What has happened different this year to cause this? The things that can trigger a heavier blue-green algae bloom is an influx of temperature with heavy amounts of evaporation that skews the ratio between nitrogen and phosphorus. So blue-green algae blooms, blue-green algae is actually a bacteria. What triggers heavier blue-green blooms is an imbalance between nitrogen and phosphorus. So when the water gets hot and we're in a drought and evaporation increases, that when the water evaporates, it leaves everything dissolved in it behind. And when you've got an imbalance between nitrogen and phosphorus, that's what triggers a blue-green algae bloom. I remember 2000, and David, where you are, I remember 2012, 13, 14, the western end of Lake Texoma, where there was a warning issued banning boaters from going into the western arms of Lake Texoma. Well, we were in a severe drought. So with that drought, the lake had dropped 8 or 10 feet, which concentrated the volumes of nitrogen and phosphorus. But the balance between the ratios of the two were such that it triggered toxic levels of blue-green algae in that part of the lake. So it's triggered by heat, evaporation rates, and an imbalance between nitrogen and phosphorus. Jay Spires, Japanese beetle infestation year 2. We know how to treat the lawn. Heard it can take 2 to 3 years to get under control. Any recommendations for treatment on pond plants? They have devoured our pickerelweed. Well, Jay, dude, nobody's ever asked me about Japanese beetles eating pickerelweed. Huh. Well, Japanese beetles, I tell you what, here's my gut. I don't know what it takes to treat them in a lawn, but I'm going to say it's something that's going to parallel what you do with your lawn with your pond. The difference is, I don't know how you treat a lawn for Japanese beetles. You guys are pissing me off. I've been stumped twice. Have no idea. I don't know how to deal with. I tell you what you do. Go tell your pickerelweed to kill the damn Japanese beetles. I have no idea. Can't believe I told y'all to ask me these questions. What was I thinking? Mark Hicks, speaking of apple snails, we're getting invaded by apple snails all around us in central North Cackalack. Well, apple snails are pretty interesting creatures. I know this in central North Carolina. You guys should be able to grow some really huge red ear sunfish. They will feed on baby apple snails. The problem with apple snails, like I was talking about, is they start off upon the ground. They get the eggs are on dirt or on plants. Have I told you about bird dog? Trevor can severe. Did we talk about that? John C. Dyer had a Texas hunter feeder to take an extended bath. Worked fine after I dried it out. The buttons were a little erratic, depressing after. Dude, I'm telling you, that's what I mean. Robbie, you know what? I should have known by your last name that you're from South Louisiana. Duh. You make boudin your own self. You like boudin balls, or what's your favorite? What's your favorite? Hello, John Harson. About to fall in the Gulf of Mexico. Kaplan, geez, that's a long way down there. Hey, Jerry Siebert, Oregon. Dude, when people ask me how I'm doing, I tell them I'm still leading a pretty cool life, which I am. I got to go to Omaha and watch the finals of the College World Series, being a Texas Aggie. I got to watch 3 great baseball games. Didn't like how it ended, but you know what? I think the best team won. And then we got to deal with the coaches' exodus. Like, what? Liar, liar, pants on fire. Steve, pretty funny, buddy. Okay, John Harrison. Do you recommend any good plants to plant or sow around? Oh, that's a great question. Jim Allen, I can't wait to talk about that here in a minute. Me being such a smart aleck. My mother used to bust my butt for being a smart aleck. And, I've never healed from that. I've never healed from the spankings, and I've never healed from being a smart ass. Do you recommend any good plants to plant or sow around our 2-acre lake? No. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Let nature do what nature does, and if you like it, stay with it. If you don't, then change it. And let me justify that. I don't want to just throw that out there and live with it. Plants have got to have food, the right temperature, sunlight. If you've got those 3 things, something's going to grow. So around the edge of a pond, I love bog plants. I love arrowhead, Louisiana iris. And, depending on where you are, there's different plants. I don't know why I'm so stopped up, but I am. So it's like I'm talking through my nose. So, John, what I would tell you is if you have a brand new pond, let's see what nature does. And if you like it, and they're native, and they look good, leave it alone. If not, then replace it. I'd study, around, when you say around our 2-acre lake, what that means to me is around the edges. It doesn't mean in the water. But I'm a firm believer of having some aquatic plants under the water in water less than about 3 feet deep. I think those are great for nursery habitat, stuff that fish need. I'm a big fan of plants. Okay, Jim, drum roll, dude. Here it comes. Japanese beetles use spectricide traps within 20 feet of the pond. We caught 30,000 in 1 year. Here it comes. Drum roll. Who counted those? Did you do that? Don't answer it. I already know the answer. And you know what's really funny about that is I totally believe you. You would not write that down if it wasn't true. Can't find, okay, so Jay, there you go. Permethrin, spectricide. Hey, Jeff, I have bullfrogs this year. Seems like I don't have them every year. Well, you know what? Bullfrogs, here's a cool little tidbit. It takes 2 years for a bullfrog tadpole to mature into a bullfrog. Here's another cool tidbit. There's areas of the planet in the United States where bullfrogs are exotic species. Montana, for example. They don't want them in Montana. They don't want them in Maine. They're exotic there, which that escapes me because they're pretty tasty, rolled in cornmeal, fried in peanut oil. Trevor Fry, in your opinion, is the world record bluegill 4 pounds 12 ounces out of Alabama, true bluegill, or is it ready or something? You know what? I don't know how to offer an opinion on that, because that 4 pound 12 ounce bluegill out of Alabama, back when that fish became a record, there was no way to check the genetics. And I'm of the opinion that we don't need to second guess that. Because now they're second guessing the world record largemouth bass. The IGFA is saying that George Perry's world record largemouth bass could not have been a Florida bass. So now what's the world record Florida bass? Is it a 20-pound bass out of California? Is it the 18-pound bass out of Texas? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know that. And I don't want to know. I'd rather figure it out now and then go on. John Harson speaking. At my age, I just like the mystique. I like the mystery. I like the fact that there's a 4 pound 12 inch. Who gives a shit what sunfish it is? Beat it. Growing bigger. There is no doubt in my mind that somebody can grow a 4 pound 12 ounce bluegill if they dial in on it. And Sarah Parvin may be the one to do it. She's dialed in on that stuff. Somebody can do that, but does it have red hair genetics? Probably. I don't know. How do you know? I don't know. That would be an opinion that I can't justify. Robbie, chicken balls are the new things down here. I think I'm just going to leave that right there. Are you a chicken sexer? Okay. Chicken balls. I'm game. Ben Arnold, fathead minnows versus golden shiners. Well, hey, Ben, fathead minnows serve a completely different function than golden shiners. Fathead minnows are small, 2.5 inches long. They reproduce by building a nest underneath the firm objects. They promote the first year and a half growth rates of largemouth bass, crappie, whatever you're trying to grow. Where golden shiners are different. Golden shiners are top-end predators limited by their mouth size. They can get to be 6 or 7 inches long. 7 inches may be a stretch. 5 to 6 inches long is probably more. But they've got a totally different function than do fathead minnows. Dave Reed, 1.5 years since I stocked forage fish. Is there an advantage to adding predators in the fall versus spring? Predators are probably more available in the fall than the spring. If you add predators in the spring, that means most fish farms carried them over the winter, and they've lost some growth potential. So I'd say fall is probably better than spring, unless you wait until late spring when the new hatch is ready. People don't think about that. John Arson, we have some arrowhead. Arrowhead's a good plant. Jim Allen taught my That's good. Okay, so I'm glad to see that Kenny's agreeing with me. Ron, should you only treat the pond edges out to 6 to 8 feet with beneficial bacteria if the bottom diffusers are placed 2 to 3 feet off the bottom, which leaves the deepest? No. I like to go ahead and treat the beneficial bacteria. If you're going to use beneficial bacteria in little packets, throw them in the deepest water. John says, do you know how many bones are in a chicken's neck? Why in the hell would I know that? I don't even know how many bones are in my neck. I have no idea. You guys are killing me. This is so much fun. So, hey, 7:30. It's time to kind of wrap it up. So what I'm going to do now is tell you guys thank you so much for joining in. Remember, Pond Boss Magazine. Oh, hey, wait. You know what? Bob Lusk, Institute of Higher Pondology, October 24, 25, 26. I have 7 slots left. I think Ron may be checking in. So, oh, John, dude, no wonder. Hey, you set me up. I took the bait. Enough to hold his up. Okay, there you go. Hey, happy to do it. So, hey, Institute of Higher Pondology, guys, send me an email at boblusk@outlook.com or info@pondboss.com. I'll give you some more details on that institute. And we're going to do it in October. We're going to have a great time at the West Haven Ranch, 15-acre lake. We're going to do some really, really fun stuff. So, hey, thanks for hanging out tonight. I really appreciate it. And we will catch up with you guys next Tuesday. Not sure where I'll be, but odds are pretty high I'll be with you. So until then, adios for now.